Okay, so I think we should get started. I'm assuming everybody can still hear me.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so welcome to our presentation titled "The Metaverse is Where You Are, Exercises for the Reaching the Misinformed." My name is Marie Vans, also known as amvans lapis in most virtual worlds, including Second Life. I am an associate professor in the Department of Systems Engineering at Colorado State University, the other CSU. People think it's California State University, it's Colorado State University. And I do research there on the use of immersive technologies for education and teach courses on developing AR and VR systems and on designing educational experiences using social VR platforms. I'm also an adjunct faculty member at San Jose State University, the iSchool, where I teach a course on virtual environments for teaching and training. I've also been involved with the iSchool's Virtual Island and Second Life, VCARA, since about 2015, as originally as a student in the MLIS program. I am joined here by my colleague Bethany Winslow, also known as my Second Life wife, who is the director of online learning at the school. She's been involved with the VCARA since about 2017. So now here's an outline for our presentation today. What is the metaverse? We'll start by defining the metaverse and talk about enablers and the importance of headsets. We'll continue on with Exploding What, where we'll cover the history of the Exploders Club and talk about the places we visited, along with a description of how we've been gathering data on field trips through the use of qualitative surveys. Revamp the Survey is an analysis of those surveys late last year that led us to the need for revamping our data collection strategy. So we decided to run a short qualitative study. That would help in crafting a much more quantitative survey that would be administered right after each platform field trip. We present the data collected from that initial survey. Advancing the science, since we've developed this new post-platform survey, we have continued the VR Exploders Club field trips and have so far completed 3 visits to different platforms. We also present preliminary data from those trips and discuss how a year from now we expect amazing results. We also cover strategic initiatives that both CSU campuses are involved in. These initiatives address the implementation of Metaverse platform for use by students, faculty, and staff, specifically for education and research. To get involved at the end of the presentation, we will be giving you a URL for adding your name to the Exploders Club distribution list. If you are interested in joining us, please either fill out that form or I am Bethany or myself, and we will contact you. Okay, so we'll start with the definition of the metaverse put forth by Matthew Ball, the author of the important book on the metaverse called The Metaverse, How It Will Revolutionize Everything. By the way, Matthew Ball's book came out of a blog/website on the metaverse called matthewball.vc. You can find a lot of articles going back to 2019 at his website, not just, more stuff that's in his than what's in his book. And I put the URL in the chat. You can read what the book is about in his essay, The Metaverse, what it is, where to find it, and who will build it, which is one of the stories in his main page. So core enablers are basically a framework or stack upon which the metaverse is built. Hardware refers to the physical technologies and devices used to develop, interact with, and access the metaverse. Compute refers to the computing power required to support the metaverse, including things like AI, graphics rendering, physics computations. Networking is obvious because without it we could not be able to experience the metaverse together. Virtual platforms are the places we work, play, and collaborate in, and without them, the metaverse doesn't exist. Interchange tools and standards help to make sure things work the same way no matter where we are in the metaverse. We obviously aren't there yet. Payments are another critical aspect. While we've had that in Second Life for a long time, blockchain technologies have taken off because they are perceived to be more secure. Obviously, we couldn't build anything in the metaverse if we didn't have a way to get content and assets into them. But this includes the ability to protect artistic rights, so some form of digital asset management tied to the user data and identity is needed. Finally, all these core enablers are affected by user behaviors that may be observed and tracked for trends or fads as a form of feedback for improvement. This image of the core enablers of the metaverse is from Matthew Ball's Metaverse Primer, and I've put the URL in there as well. Okay, so one of the questions we get asked all the time is whether the metaverse requires everyone to have a headset. I'd like to point out a couple things here. First of all, Second Life has been around since 2003, and apparently in 2007, Rosdale and Jeff Bezos were thinking about living as avatars in the virtual world online 50% of their time. That's actually 3 years before Lucky Palmer turned 17 and started working on his first version of the Oculus in his parents' garage. I'm going to assume here they were not even considering headsets at that point. In 2014, when Facebook bought Oculus from Palmer, Zuckerberg was convinced that everyone will be using headsets to access virtual worlds. What I think he completely missed is the fact that headsets are uncomfortable, have zero accessibility designed into them, and that they are expensive, even at $300 each. So some of the most popular virtual worlds out there are experienced using 2D screens. I saw a statistic recently on New World's Note that said only 30% of the users in VR chat actually come in on headsets. And Jeremy Bailenson of Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab has a 30-minute rule, which means he doesn't let anyone in his lab wear that headset more than 30 minutes at a time. So I'm sure most of you have been in a headset, have experienced issues when you wear them for too long. Even if you don't experience cyber sickness, you start to feel the weight and possibly the heat, which causes sweat to pour down to your eyes, so you can't see anything anyway. So here, I'm adding here a link to what is a metaverse and why does Mark Zuckerberg care so much about it from Forbes. It's a very interesting article. Okay, so the metaverse seems to be much more than a buzzword these days, and one piece of evidence for that is the fact that the World Economic Forum has jumped into the ring to help with both defining and building it. Last year, there was an initiative launched at the WEF annual meeting in Davos. The mission is defining and building an open-end and inclusive metaverse. Personally, I think that's a great idea. If you look at the website for the initiative, you'll find these quotes from some of the most important influencers today, including Matthew Ball, Jeremy Bailenson, Neil Stephenson, the person who should always get credit for coining the term metaverse, and not Facebook, Meta. Peggy Johnson, who's the CEO of Magic Leap, which is an important technology that will help us to lose the controllers in the future. And this guy, Nick Clegg, some guy from Facebook. I encourage you to explore the WEF Metaverse Initiative website, and I've put the URL in there as well. Okay, so kids are growing up today very familiar with 3D environments. Games like Minecraft, Fortnite, and Roblox are just a few names that come to mind, but trending in the gaming continues to grow according to active player statistics. And there's the URL for that. According to SearchLogix, which is a search engine optimization company, Minecraft, which is one of the older games, is still popular precisely because of the creative and social aspect. You can build and hang out with friends while doing so. They report that younger players still dominate the Minecraft servers. People want to collaborate with others, the social aspect, and the creative building aspect, I think here is key, or we think is key. Here's a URL for that information. Okay, this image from the slide, Metaverse, shows that by far the largest virtual worlds are those mainly accessed by kids, tweens, and teens. I want to point out a couple of things about this image. First of all, the size of the dot tells how many monthly active visitors are in these worlds. Notice that Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft are in the hundreds of millions. Second Life, shown here with the giant blue arrow because it's otherwise difficult to see, is 1 million. And the vast majority of those users are older. But the real information that pops out here is the fact that the target audience here at VWBPE are staff, students, and faculty at higher ed institutions. And while we might not care now about the hundreds of millions playing Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, eventually, and because we are all old enough to know that kids grow up in a heartbeat, they will be our target group for us sooner or later. So we believe that by understanding the platform the kids are using today will help us build learning experiences that those very same kids will expect to be using in the future. Now this graph shows monthly active users for VR-enabled virtual worlds. You'll notice many that we have visited over the past 3 years brought together as part of the VR Explorers Club. Again, the number of monthly users seems to be very low compared to the ones we showed in the previous slide. Part of that is the fact that while these places might have desktop versions, and hence there's no need for a headset, the affordances of these platforms do not approach what's available in non-VR platforms. VR chat is probably the most popular of the VR virtual worlds, and the ability to create interactive experiences for free, mostly using Unity, and the availability of shareable content makes this a leading platform. The other thing that's interesting about this chart is that AltSpace, Microsoft's defunct metaverse platform, had 1.2 million monthly active users, and still it was canceled. That screams, don't develop for a single platform, pretty loudly, I think. Next slide. I'm going to be honest here. We don't have a clue what they mean by Ethereum blockchain virtual worlds, what that actually means. But the only reason we included it here is because both Somnium Space and Spatial appear to use this, and these are worlds with the Explorers Club have visited. I do think there is some debate on whether Spatial belongs on this slide and not the next. But I know that Spatial used to be a downloadable from Steam that's recently been pulled, has recently pulled support for Steam and now works only on Oculus. But it also works in the browser. Other interesting details about this chart is that none of these worlds existed before 2020, and most of them are either still in development or released this year. It's still pretty sparse. It's a pretty sparse graph. So it really does remain to be seen whether any of these platforms will be successful in the long run. Okay, but this slide shows that the number of blockchain browser-based virtual platforms has exploded in recent years. Still don't get that Ethereum thing. The only platform we recognize from VR Explorers is Decentraland up near the top right corner. And we can't know for sure, but many of the platforms we've visited over the past couple of years seem to be based on Mozilla Hubs, which is very mature open source code base. And anyone can download a copy and adapt it to their own purposes. Many of these new worlds are difficult to assess because they are there's either no demos available, or you have to make an appointment with their sales team to get a look. But multiple people and organizations are trying to keep on top of how many platforms and kinds of technologies they are based on coming and going. But as Ryan Schultz describes it, it's like trying to herd cats. I don't even know how many platforms there are, but VR Explorers have been to many spaces and usually many times. Okay, this is not a new message. We've been advocating for expanding the definition of what we think to be immersive, or what virtual reality is, what the idea of a metaverse is, and that we need to stay nimble and adaptable. Some of these activities we are involved in professionally include the California State University Chancellor's Office of Innovation has a monthly extended XR Common Interest group. California State University, I guess we have that twice. EDUCAUSE has an extended XR Common Interest group, and Colorado State University has a Vice President of Research Initiative on VR, and there's a lot more. But this screenshot was actually taken from a conference 2 years ago on this topic, where we were all making the same central argument. Specifically, that we need to plan for continuing use of desktop access as well as headsets and other devices. We need to promote tinkering in a very broad-based way. It's just as true today as it was 2 years ago, and there's no single platform, no one metaverse location, and that's what seems too new. What seems too new to many is not new to us. The metaverse is a decentralized collection of persistent virtual locations that's been evolving for at least 20 years. Being nimble is critical. For example, AltSpace VR, which was really popular for a group of educators the last few years, had hundreds of events at their conferences in the last few years, but AltSpace just shut down. So we just don't know what the future will hold, but we want our students to be prepared to be flexible and adaptable during using virtual spaces. While some institutions are going the route of having a vendor build a digital twin of campus, we think that focusing on VR as a service rather than a digital literacy to understand. We don't think the focus should be on getting a virtual space and VR headsets into the hands of students just so we can conduct remote access classes and lectures in those spaces. We want to encourage creative uses in terms of those environments have been used in the past, the variety of options that exist today, and to think critically about how they might be used in the future. So here's another URL that talks about this issue. Focus on the use of VR headsets is a very limiting kind of focus. Most users of virtual spaces don't have headsets, and even those of us who do still elect to use desktop access for a variety of reasons. Okay, so this is the slide. So this brings us to Vicara's VR Exploders Club. The VR Exploders Club came about because Linden Labs released Sansar, a VR-enabled world that was an updated version of Second Life. Elise Donovan-Jones, Pat Franks, Val Librarian, and I started to explore that platform to determine if Sansar was a good place to put another outpost. In November of 2019, I suggested the exploration of other platforms to Vicara's director, Pat Franks, because I knew that the rise of VR meant that educators would be looking at it for the next great EdTech tool. As a result of these informal explorations, we decided it would be beneficial to explore with specific goals in mind, goals targeting the use of them for education. As a result, we ran a survey. In VWBPE March 2020, we presented our very first survey findings on what the wants versus what the needs were that educators had to have to be comfortable delivering educational content in virtual reality platforms. The VR Exploders Club emerged from this. So here are the results of the analysis from that first survey done in 2019. And you may recall from our presentation in 2020 that we were able to identify 8 criteria that educators needed in order to utilize a platform for teaching. These criteria included voice, the ability to communicate via speech in world, both publicly and privately, support for real-time presentations, onboarding experience has to be easy, griefer handling, videos and multimedia functions, desktop VR access where an actual VR headset is not required, the ability to teleport to different geographical locations, and cross-platform collaboration and interactions. So armed with the results of this survey, we started running monthly field trips specifically to determine if they met the set of criteria identified. So Slime Space is one of those platforms we visited several times. The graphics are great. The interactivity potential is far and above one of the best. My own students find this one to be one of their favorites. We've gone to, next slide. We've gone to Decentraland twice, and I think the general consensus about it is, so what's the big deal? The avatars are so-so, but they do have legs. And most of the builds are very low poly, so not all that visually pleasant. People are excited about these worlds because they are blockchain worlds. Next slide. VR Chat is one of the more popular VR worlds. We've been there a couple of times, and it's also a place I like to take my students. It meets a lot of the criteria. As I mentioned before, Sansar is what got the VR Club, the Exploders Club going. These are images taken from the very last field trip we took this March. Every time we go back to one of these platforms, we find new things and a lot more interactivity. The top image is of us at a spooky maze that I never figured out. But the bottom left is a puzzle world that was pretty fun, and the bottom right is an amusement park with lots of different rides. Okay, then we have been to Engage VR at least 3 times, and every time it is so different. We spend most of the time trying to figure out how to use it rather than exploring. We've also been to Somnium Space. It's been a while, so we should go back to see what that's about. Okay, Spatial. Spatial is an up-and-coming browser-based world. This is another platform that changes constantly. See the difference between the half avatars when we went in 2021 and the avatars from last month? Very different. Okay, and then we've been to Virbela a couple of times. This world changes, but not very significantly, and it is so targeted to the enterprise user that it is somewhat boring. Frames is basically the browser-based version of Virbela, and again, it's very limited in the content you can bring in and interactivity. Okay, and then this is an image of the field trip survey we asked exploders to fill out after every platform field trip. This survey collected text impressions after visits. There's no way to quantify this data. It is useful to read, but hard to use in any meaningful way. Like our outings, we were just tinkering with our experiences, just in exploration mode and gathering impressions in the moment that were fleeting and subject to change easily. Here we are just a little over 3 years into the VR Exploder Club outings, which started in the fall semester of 2019, and the platforms keep changing. Our experience levels with doing this have gotten much more comfortable, and the qualitative data we have feels ephemeral. So the platform options aren't decreasing much, except for AltSpace just shutting down. But if anything, there's more coming and more features, and every time we go back, there's something new or different. So it's a challenge to get a grasp on such a thing as hosting the VR Exploder outings, never mind trying to gather data and present anything that's meaningful. But we believe these insights and experiences to be valuable, so we persist and will continue to refine the process going forward. So as of July 2022, a small team of Exploder researchers sat down to analyze the qualitative data from the surveys. We looked at it on a per platform basis. However, the response rate was very low. So in the end, we looked for common themes across platforms. And as you can see, we identified 4: avatars, ease of use and accessibility, content development, communication, and concurrently, we realized that we were missing information which might tell us the importance of these themes. So in August 2022, we started working on questions to get more specific feedback that could be quantified and organized in a way to put the information into specific chunks and limit the number of questions. We didn't want it to turn into 30-question survey after each visit. So our collaborative effort was finalized in January of 2023 this year with 2 surveys, one for post-visit each month, the second one as general feedback from our members who have been doing this now for 2 years. I will now turn the presentation over to Bethany, and she will talk about our most recent Exploder data and where we go from here.
Okay, so our previous surveys gathered qualitative data. Now we really want to focus on gathering quantitative data. So there's a few things I want to mention. First of all, this is all very small sample and anecdotal, but it is still valuable. It's also a very quickly evolving field, as Maria's mentioned, with a lot of moving parts, a lot of variation in terms of platforms and features, even who participates in our outings and what their level of expertise or experience is. We also don't have the same 10 or 15 people going out with us each month. Our participants use a range of devices. Some people use a VR headset 100% of the time. Others trade off on what they use. So our first survey is a general opinions one, and the second one is for right after each visit to a particular platform. And these are developed in Qualtrics, and they are anonymous. The general opinion survey is really the start in trying to quantify those overall impressions that we've been gathering on all those outings. We had participants rate several items that fall into 6 broad categories and rate them as either important, neutral, or unimportant. And again, we're just trying to quantify very broadly what educators value. In the post-visit survey, we're asking participants to rank how well that platform meets each of those important criterion. Now, we sent our general opinion survey out to our full list of 72 people that are on the VR Exploders list in February. And this list includes us, and Maria and I have both participated in these surveys. We had just 11 completed responses. So our response rate for that was just 15%. And that's much lower than we'd like, but it's just about smack dab in the middle of an expected response range. We do assume that the responses we have are likely to be from our most active participants who have been to many of the outings since 2019, but we can't determine that. Aside from the two of us, we generally have a half a dozen or so of other people who are consistent attendees at our monthly outings, but the exact number and who specifically attends varies a bit from month to month. We have a low of maybe 6 people at an outing to a high of, I think 12 or 15 is the highest at the most. So let's take a look at what we do have. So this first question is, rate the importance of the following content options for teaching and learning in virtual spaces. The 5 content options are that the content is directly importable, that there are in-world building tools and permissions, that the content added to the environment is persistent, that there's a marketplace of some kind for content, and that there is available storage capacity. So persistent content and in-world building tools and permissions are clearly the most important of the criteria on this list. But it's worth noting that one person out of those 11 thought that content didn't need to be directly importable, while the others all rated that as important. The second question is to rate the importance of the following usability features for teaching and learning in virtual spaces. The 8 criterion are a customizable avatar, persistent locations that are easy to find, camera controls to switch between first person and third person view, access via different kinds of devices, ease of connecting with other people, the ability to use teaching tools in world, like being able to share web forms or presentation tools, robust avatar animations and movement options, and the last being high quality graphic fidelity. Persistent locations that could be easily found again was rated as important by everyone, followed closely by camera controls that allow a person to control first or third person views. 10 people ranked that as important and only 1 person ranked it as neutral. Just as interestingly, however, are the areas where there are divergent opinions, the most divergent being a highly customizable avatar. While 5 people rated that as important, 4 were neutral, and 2 ranked it as unimportant. This next question asks the users to rate the importance of the following communication features for teaching and learning in virtual spaces. In-world presentation tools, whether that's video or desktop screen share of an in-world slideshow option, was ranked by all 11 respondents as important. The ability to use voice and also the ability to use public text chat were the 2 runners-up for being most important. 10 people ranked both of them as important, and only 1 person marked that feature as neutral. Interestingly, no features were marked unimportant, but the communication feature with the most neutral ratings was for in-world note cards or other alternatives for sharing information asynchronously. 3 people rated that as neutral and only 8 people rated it as important. So this question asked the users to drag and drop the following criteria into their order of priority. I know it looks a little bit confusing with all those colors and lines on there. It might not be super visible, but Qualtrics organizes this into the priority for us. Accessibility was ranked number 1 priority overall, followed by overall ease of use. Then in third place was robust options to interact with content and environments, which among other things means desktop access as well as VR headset access. Having pre-existing relevant educational content, however important we think that is, that was ended up being 4th priority. And ranked last was cost, meaning a way to analyze cost to benefit. Now, even though accessibility is rated as number 1 priority overall, I do want to point out the variations in the responses here. Only 2 people out of 11 actually ranked it as the most important priority, while 8 others put it into 2nd or even 3rd place. More people rated ease of use as the important priority. This next question asked, in general, when a virtual environment can be accessed in both desktop and VR headset modes, how important is it for learning that somebody opts to use a VR headset when they have one? Obviously, there can be very specific use cases where a specific device might be useful, but this is a very broad question being asked of people who are experienced users of more than one kind of device and more than one kind of virtual environment. So it was interesting that a little bit more than a third of the respondents felt that in general, it would be important for somebody to prioritize the use of a VR headset if they own one, if they have one. An equal number were neutral on this, but there were those who felt it was unimportant. They were clearly in the minority here. Now, we've mentioned before, some VR exploders prefer or only use a VR headset or won't even come into some place like Second Life. This might be a good moment to pause and ask what our audience thinks. Now, given that last finding, you might be surprised to see on this slide, we asked people what platforms are currently the most useful overall for creating compelling educational experiences. They could choose as many as they wanted. And clearly, our respondents think that Second Life and OpenSim are useful. So how do we reconcile that with the fact that these aren't really able to be used with VR headsets? I also want to mention that 6 people here indicate that there is something other on the list, and we specifically asked for them to identify what that is, what that other platform is, in the final text field question. So the final question asks respondents, please share any additional thoughts. And there were 9 responses to this question. Only 9 people out of the 11 put something here. And here's a few excerpted quotes. It's worth pointing out that 2 people indicate that VR headsets shouldn't be required or that they're uncomfortable to wear, when just over a third of the respondents also indicated that they thought it was important to choose a VR headset if you have that option. So even though this is a very small sample size, there are clearly some distinctly different opinions here. There's also a theme for browser-based, and I wanted to mention that in the previous question, where 6 people indicated a preference for a different virtual environment, but then only 2 people here mention a different virtual environment, Frame VR. 4 people just didn't specify what that other platform was. Now, we're still fine-tuning this approach, and we have a new internal spreadsheet tracker and a more formalized way of gathering data and the information on our VR exploders. In fact, in preparing this presentation, we realized that 2 important questions were entirely missing from the new surveys. So we're trying to keep the survey questions to an absolute minimum, but these are also important details to collect. When we have a larger amount of data, there might be indications that some platforms work better in a VR device for newer users than using a desktop, or vice versa. We'll be interested to see how people's experience level might contribute to how they rate a platform or rank one as best, but that kind of insight will require a lot more VR Exploder participants and more outings, but we do hope to get it. But let's just take a look at the last 3 outings we've done just this year with the new post-survey visit. And again, the response rates here are really small. And I'll mention that in January, we went to AltSpace VR before it had closed and before we knew it had closed. And we had 4 survey responses. In February, we went to Spatial, and we've got, I think, 5 responses. And earlier this month, we went to Sansar, and we had 5 survey responses. So one of the big key takeaways here is the low response rates. Now, the post surveys is higher than the general survey, but we had 9 people who went to us when we went to Sansar this last month. And our post survey response rate is still only 55%. So that might be considered pretty good for a survey overall, but we'd really like for it to be much higher. So the purpose of this post-visit survey is to measure what each participant thought of that specific platform with a standard 5-point Likert scale. The criterion are the same as our general opinion survey, so it's asking on a scale of 1 to 5 how easy or how hard, how satisfied or dissatisfied the visitor was with accessibility, the ease of use, the functionality, etc. We visited multiple platforms 2 or 3 times. The features and our impressions of these places change over time, so there might be insights we can share in the future that'll show how impressions of that platform have gotten better or worse over time. But for now, we have 3 different platforms that we went to recently, and we'll look at how they compare with each other. We put these side by side so it's easier to look at them. The full text description of each question is on the slides here, but it's in an abbreviated form. I'm going to read each one of these out, but I do want to remind you that AltSpace had 4 responses. Spatial and Sansar both had 5. Not everyone answered all the questions, however, so it adds to it the challenge in reporting and comparing. But as we've been saying, these are small sample sizes and anecdotal at this point anyway. So the question asks, on a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with the platform addressing accessibility? For example, text chat alternative for hearing impaired students. Spatial was rated higher overall for accessibility and was the only one to get an extremely satisfied rating. Conversely, Sansar was the only one that someone rated as extremely dissatisfied for accessibility. For the next question, on a scale of 1 to 5, how easy or hard would it be for novice users to onboard and use the platform? The responses to AltSpace are clustered closer to the center, so sort of the Midlands. Sansar rates a little better than that, and Spatial is a bit of an interesting mix. Again, it's the only one of the 3 platforms to hit the very easy rating, but there were also 2 responses that described it as somewhat hard. This third question asks, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate the functionality of this platform for education? For example, options for hardware, controllers, headsets, desktop and VR access, additional tools for communicating, presenting, and teaching. AltSpace and Sansar have the same results. That put both of them overall basically in the middle of the ratings, meaning not really functioning and not really dysfunctional. And again, the rating for Spatial stands out because of that wider discrepancy, albeit this is only a couple of users that's producing this result. But again, it's the only time where someone is rating it very functional, but there's someone counterbalancing that with a rating of somewhat dysfunctional. This fourth question asks, on a scale of 1 to 5, how easy do you think it would be to create educational content in this platform? For example, embedded creation tools or content import options. AltSpace and Sansar, again, do not fare as well as Spatial overall. What is interesting, because this is a very clear discrepancy with somebody rating Spatial as extremely hard in terms of creating educational content, while others are rating it as very easy or somewhat easy. And our fifth question asks, given the questions above, how does this platform measure up overall compared with others you have used? So I just want to point out, it's not asking for a comparison against, the other 2 that are shown here. It's against any other platforms you've used. Again, AltSpace and Sansar just aren't faring as well as Spatial overall. That said, for this question, Spatial isn't that highly rated, right? It's just got a little bit of that discrepancy between several different users. A few things where it's somewhat better than other platforms, but a few are still rating it as somewhat worse than other platforms. But overall, doing better than the other. Our final question asks for any additional thoughts or impressions to share about using this platform or using it for education. And I've got a few quotes here that we've just excerpted. There were only a couple of comments about AltSpace, and again, this was before any of us knew it was being shut down. Both comments, however, were negative about the focus on voice chatting, that there was no robust text chat option, and even that instant messaging was reduced to the equivalent of tweets. Spatial was called out for having too much lag in VR, and another user noted that they rarely get nauseous in VR, and that was an issue. And Sansar was noted for the VR version having less functionality than desktop mode. Another user also documented that it was buggy. So again, this is not all the comments. We just, for the purposes of time, we wanted to keep this kind of a brief overall. So where do we go from here? The number of platforms to choose from is absolutely exploding, pardon the expression. And from what we've seen in the last few years, even opinions of experienced VR exploders varies widely from visit to visit. We don't have enough data yet. And even as we gather more, it's like trying to hit a moving target, but we've got to start somewhere as far as being able to recommend platforms when our institutions are asking us for our guidance. They're looking at us and thinking we're the experts in this stuff. So what are we currently promoting at the iSchool and at CSU Fort Collins? Let's briefly talk about that as we wrap up our presentation and hopefully have some time for a bit of Q&A. So at the iSchool, let me just move that slide there. It's important to us that our students are exposed to various emerging technologies that are impacting the library and information science field. And according to the American Library Association, VR is an important current and future trend. Now, we think that browser-based is the easiest to learn with no coding skills or special equipment needed, and we're hosting Mozilla Hub's open source our servers. And I'm happy and very proud to say this choice came directly out of Vakara and the work that we've done, and Marie and I have done together along with other colleagues in the VR Exploders in the last 3 years. The fact that this code is open source is also well aligned with the mission of libraries and our commitment overall to open educational resources in general as an institution. But we're making exploration of this technology available to our faculty and staff as well. It's not yet integrated with the curriculum. For now, this is an exploratory option for those who are interested. I've been very encouraged by what our library students have been able to create, most of whom have no experience with virtual reality. The Colorado State University CSU's Vice President for Research has an active VR initiative, which includes the exploration of the use of browser-based information spaces. And the first implementation is the VR Mental Wellness and Research Experience Spatial Room. This room focuses on getting information to students, faculty, and staff on mental wellness resources at the school, as well as research activities that use VR for mental wellness and training. This also works well on a mobile device. There is a spatial app on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Marie has downloaded it to her phone and is able to access that space without lag. So I think that's pretty exciting. She just gave me a tour the other day, and now I'm all excited about spatial too. Just saying. So the expertise of desktop virtual world users, however, is largely missing from much of the AR VR conversations happening today. We're working to change that. I hope you'll please consider joining us if you want to contribute to this research. And we want to say thank you so much for attending our presentation today. We do have a link to our forum to join the VR Exploders, and I am so glad we do have some time for some questions. I'm sure that was a bit of a whirl. Thanks, Agile Bill. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
We were so afraid. We were cutting stuff down this afternoon, going, "We have too much. It's too much. Cut."
We had 72 slides. Like
we had way too much. Cut. We're gonna have to talk a mile a minute.
I did, and I think I did. I hope it wasn't too fast.
Yeah. No. I think we're just like. Whoosh.
But anyway, yeah, please let us know if you're interested in joining. This is a real research project, and we hope that at next year's Virtual World's Best Practices in Education, that we have some really amazing results.
Yeah, you know what? Electra mentions she says only 72. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised because that was one of the, we were like, okay, here's our responses. What's the response rate? 72 people, and again, there's a core group of us, and some people are actually here. Sidearm, cough. Who else is here? Is Val in the audience? Val is almost always at the VR Exploders, Pat Franks, but we have different people that come. And yes, James, I'm glad you said that you've missed a survey or two. Don't feel bad, because honestly, I know I have too. I did not miss it. Yeah, we all have done it, right? It's just a fact, but we're trying to make it easy, and then we're trying to make people fill out the surveys. We need data. Yeah, please do. Anybody who's interested, you guys don't have to have VR headsets, and so.
The other thing too is that, even though this is a serious research project, we have a lot of fun. We really do. We spend 95% of the time laughing.
Yeah, we're load testing. Let's see if we can crash the platform,
we try
logging in multiple times. Yeah. Yes, you do not have to have a VR headset, you guys. Oh my gosh.
Only go to spaces.
I say that all the time.
Yeah, we only go to, the Exploders only go to spaces that have a desktop version.
Thanks, Day. We're glad you fill out the surveys. But yeah, I know I've missed a couple plenty of times. Yeah, you guys do not have to have a VR headset. We go to places, any social virtual environments that you can access on a desktop and or a VR headset. But we have several people who are always on a VR headset. Question, Sidearm asks, one of the survey responders said the survey does not address the role of mobile. I'm glad you asked that, because it's ironic that here we just talked about all the browser-based stuff is accessible on a mobile, but yeah, you're right. We can't have the surveys be 30 questions. If we can't tackle everything, that's the problem. So anybody want to join a committee where we can vote on the questions that need to go onto the surveys or not?
Yes,
because I'm sure I would have people say this is not a quiz, it's a waste of a question. I don't know.
Go ahead, Sight.
Yeah, please.
So the red dramatic pie charts and pointed out that Roblox and Minecraft are most popular with 20-ish, plus or minus 5-year-olds, and a lot of that is on mobile already. And if we're aiming for that demographic who are already doing a lot on mobile, is it not time now, especially if Second Life has got a mobile beta out, and you just mentioned which one? You just tried one out, Marie, with mobile. So
yeah, it's spatial.
Spatial.
Yeah.
Yeah, spatial.
Yeah. So try us out on the mobile ones. Why don't you?
Well, we could add it. We could add it to the one that we haven't added yet, which was what the platform is, and then there is one sort of free form input field where people could talk about, well, this was really bad on mobile because I couldn't do whatever, right? But yeah, you're right. The issue is we want people to fill them out. We want it to be like 5 seconds for them to do. We don't want it because they won't finish them. We do have problems sometimes with people finishing the surveys.
Yeah. And we can think of a lot more work too. Like, why don't we just make a marathon day? Come on, everybody come in on Saturday. You have to use both devices. Desktop, you use your VR headset, then we're gonna come back and we'll do it on a desktop, and then we're gonna come back with mobile, and then we're gonna test it with these different things. Everybody we'll take a whole day to evaluate one platform as a group, right? How many people wanna join us now?
So I did want to address a question in the chat from Dixie, who asks, do participants always join on a voluntary basis, or was this part of a course, or do they get credit at some point? So one thing is the Exploders themselves is for educators. Students can join if they want. We do have a few students that have come on our trips. I teach a class in which my students get credit for designing educational experiences in one of the platforms. And I give them all the platforms. In the beginning of the semester, we go on field trips every week to a different place. The ones that I figure are going to be the easiest for them to actually create, educational experiences within the 16 weeks of the semester, which is a very short period of time. that's something that we're trying to get them used to. But for the Exploders Club, yeah, we allow mostly educators who are interested in using these platforms, but also students can come as well. And I see Will Exploders have something like a season or a series of visits. I guess we go once a month, usually the second Saturday of the month. But are you suggesting like a season in that we would go to the same place more than once? Six visits in a short period of time, or 6 visits over 6 months?
I'm not sure I understand. 6 visits in a group? Take one group
Sorry,
of
I'm
people.
streaming too.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right.
No, it's all right. I no, just trying to, the Hypergrid Safari that Thursday Ember does in Open Simulator is she's doing that now as seasons, which I think is working out really well. It lets the participants and the people preparing to have a really nice sense that, okay, we're going to do a series of 10 visits, and then that'll be one quantity, and then sometime later we'll do another season and then another season. So sometimes it seems arbitrary and things like that. So maybe that's some regularity would help for participants and for organizers.
Well, I went to a couple of those, and I love that, the Thursday Embers outings. From my understanding and from going to a couple of those, that's like, here's this community that's in OpenSim. Let's go visiting each other's places. So it wasn't bringing new people to OpenSim. It was a bunch of OpenSim users going to visit OpenSim locations, which is awesome because we all need to connect. But the VR Exploders, we're trying to get anybody who's interested in, and Marie and I both know, as well as you guys probably know, colleagues at your institutions that are doing, VR research or are interested in VR, but they're very hung up. They're like, oh, we found this great program. We've been working with these guys for 2 years. It's Engage and blah, blah, blah. We're building the metaverse. I've literally heard that. We're building a metaverse library using X platform, right? And they haven't been anywhere else. Or somebody just emailed me, oh yeah, you gave me some good ideas because I didn't know where we should go after Altspace, educators in VR died, right? Or it didn't die. I'm sure they're going to Engage, but there's more than just Engage. There's more than just Altspace. There's stuff is going to come and go, and we need people that want to go visit other places.
Definitely, and more participants would be great. So
we do.
Yeah. And the other thing is that, keep in mind that one of our goals is to understand the affordances of these places. And we've been talking too about, should we go to Minecraft? Should we go to Roblox? Should we go to, what was the other one? Fortnite.
I'm like, yeah, I'm the one who's like, we have to go into Roblox. I'm like, that's what, yeah, I think we need to go there first.
Because it really is true. All of those kids are going to grow up at some point in time, and many of them are going to go to college, right, or to university, and they're going to come with their own set of expectations and abilities to that many of us did not grow up with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're 4 minutes over. Again, if you want, Bethany, do we have that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Link. Here's the link to the VR Exploders thing. There you go.
To get onto the distribution list, please, or just IM Bethany or myself, and we'll get in touch about getting you on the monthly lists.
No, we will make you fill out the web form, because this time around we're saying, hey, we record these, right, for research purposes, and hey, you're going to fill out the survey, right? Like, please don't join us if you really, because I think some people just think it's just a fun outing. Like, oh, I just want to hang out with you guys and have fun. It's like, we do have fun, but please fill out the survey. It's not that many questions. It doesn't take that long. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for all those nice comments. God, we probably didn't get to answer everybody's questions, but
Yeah.
we so appreciate you guys coming. We love this community, and we really want to make sure that the expertise in this world is represented outside of this world. And we're, from where I sit, we interact with people who they don't come in here, they don't know, they just so. Oh, hooray! We have one Creaches here. Hooray! Shout out to the, it's a niche, geeky little group we got. We gotta support one another. Thanks, Ellie.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, all.
Thanks.
I've stopped recording, so we're good.